Welcome to Magical Women. I'm your host, Connie Boyd. This is the second sequel talk with Luna Shimada. Luna's honesty and insight about living in the shadow of a magic legend and learning from a disastrous magic choice make this talk really special. Now, before we start, I want to remind you to subscribe and hit that notifications bell. It's very important to us, and we need to increase our subscribers so we can qualify for more YouTube benefits. If you've watched other Magical Women guest talks, or if this is your first time to our channel, welcome. And please spread the word and encourage friends, family, and colleagues to subscribe to our channel. We love hearing from you, and it's great when you comment and provide feedback for future Magical Women talks. So please continue to do that. Now, back to Luna's second talk. I know you will relate to her as she candidly discusses her struggles, challenges, choices, and successes. Every professional magician has a secret fear. What's your secret fear?
A secret fear?
I've been asking multiple magicians this, and it's interesting the answers I've been getting. Some refer to their performance, some refer to emotions they've had to overcome. So it's just, there's usually an element that is perhaps your Achilles heel that you've had to work a little harder to overcome.
Okay. Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah, for me, it's definitely the fear of not being good enough. Mm-hmm. Having a very famous father and a famous magic family, you know, I've had to live under a pretty big shadow my whole life. Yeah. Right? And people can't help themselves. I mean, magicians can't help themselves drawing comparisons. And then to be a woman to boot, they were huge shoes to fill, right? And there was always this kind of, you know, like it wasn't hard enough to just be a female magician trying to get people to take you seriously and carve out a niche for yourself, right? But then you're Shimada's daughter, you know, you got this famous legendary father who everybody loves. And I mean, like they just freaking worship him.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And, you know, and I have to live up to that. I have to live up to the name. I have to live up to his, you know, his larger than life persona, you know? And so, you know, it's like, I always felt like this little tree kind of growing in the shadow of this giant mountain. Yeah. So yeah, I would say that I even gone so far as to not even really categorize myself as a magician per se. Because I'm not really a magician, because when I look at these tricksters and these guys doing all their techniques and stuff, or when I look at my dad with his ridiculously imaginably hard billiard ball routine that nobody can do but him. You know what I mean? I think I can't do that, and I can't do that, and I can't do that. I guess I'm not really a magician, I'm just a performer. So I kind of relate to myself more as a performance artist than a traditional magician, because I use so many different mediums to create my art. I used to be exclusively a silent performer, but it's definitely moving in a more philosophical sort of performance artist direction than a traditional magician. I don't perform like a traditional magician anymore. Yeah. And I'm okay with that now. I always felt like I never really could live up to the traditional trickster magician archetype label. So there's always been sort of a latent insecurity there about whether or not I was good enough. I'm sure that a bamboo tree, if it was growing next to an oak tree, would start to feel insecure because the oak is so large and so tall, right? But the bamboo tree is very flexible and extremely strong. And I'm more like the bamboo than the oak, you know? They're both trees, but they're completely different.
It's a great analogy.
Have different, you know, strengths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, can you reveal your worst magic mistake and how you overcame it and what you learned from it? And we all have one or two or dozens.
Probably my FISM performance in 1994 at Yokohama, Japan. I was asked to perform on the gala show at FISM, and I had just put my act together. I mean, my act was so new. I had only been doing it a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was FISM and everything, I got overly ambitious because I thought, I didn't, again, going back to the, I don't, having the fear of not being good enough, I wanted to wow them. I wanted to have a really dynamic, flamboyant act.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked like a mad woman possessed for about 3 months because I got added to the bill like only 3 months before the convention. Had 3 months, right, to completely revamp my act. And I started building this, like very ambitious backdrop that did multiple things. And I changed the structure of my act completely and made it way more complicated and way harder than it was. But the guy saw my simple act at a cabaret show in Tokyo a couple months ago, and he booked me based on that act.
Right.
Like he saw that act and he thought that act was good enough to perform at FISM. I stressed myself out so much trying to do this. I ended up really overcomplicating the act, putting a lot of new stuff into the act that wasn't ready. And I show up with this big giant set, and I had like an enormous amount of technical issues that I had to overcome.
Yeah.
And, and it was a big fail for me. I think that the act failed very miserably. Like the audience didn't get it, and I didn't get a good response.
Okay.
It was humiliating and embarrassing for my dad.
That's a big blow to overcome.
And it happened right at the beginning of my career. I would say that the mistake that I made, looking back on that, was that I got overly ambitious and I bit off more than I could chew. If I were to revisit that, I would have just maybe made a few minor improvements to the act that I was doing.
Right.
Like something doable and easy. Okay, maybe a better costume, a nicer table, but pretty much just leave it alone, you know what I mean? And just remind myself that I was booked to do this contract based on what I am doing right now, which means that it was more than enough.
And being within your comfort zone, you can relax and actually focus on.
And I could have focused more on just practicing. If I'd have used those 3 months to just practice the act that I already had, instead of trying to do a bunch of new stuff, I may have succeeded better. So I think that's a really huge lesson. Yeah. Is that sometimes we become overly, sometimes we overreach.
Subscribe now and click on the bell to receive weekly notifications of new content. When you have a young student, beginner, what do you suggest that they start with in magic?
A young student, again, for me, it really is a process of defining who they are.
Okay.
And I started creating a series of DVDs. The first one is called it's called The Art of Refinement. And the first one is out there. It's been out for a while. It's called Define Thyself. I'm in the process of finishing up the other two. I have a Define Thyself is the first one. Design Thyself is the second one. And Direct Thyself is the third one.
Good. Mm-hmm.
So, and I call it the 3D process. Anyway, I have a very kind of natural ability to look at someone, watch the way they perform and kind of intuitively figure out, which category they fall into. Are they a trickster? Are they a sorcerer? Are they an oracle? Or are they a sage? Mm-hmm. Sometimes a young person falls between a trickster and a sage, old soul type, right? Yes. Old soul types have a lot to say. They need to have meaning behind their magic because it's just how they're wired. The first thing you got to do is figure out who you are, and you do that by asking yourself, what kind of magic is it that turns you on? What gets you excited? When you watch that performer and that performer inspires you, what is it about them that inspires you? Mm-hmm. Is it their storyline? Is it their scripting? Is it their character? Is it their magic? Is it actually the effects that they do that excites you? What is that? Figure out what that is, right. And then you'll know, because if you're excited about the tricks that they're doing, then you're probably a trickster. Right. If you're excited about their presentation, right, then you're probably you're probably a sage or a storyteller. If you're excited about the visual, dynamic, flamboyantness of it, oh, I love the costume, I love the props, I love, the excitement.
The razzle dazzle.
Yeah, then you're a sorcerer.
Yeah. Nice.
If you love mentalism, if you love puzzles, if you love, anything that has to do with the mind or, moving objects with your mind, then you're an oracle. That's your realm, that's your domain. So I would say really take some time to find out who you are. What kind of magician are you? That makes it so much easier. People usually don't do that until much later in the process. It's the very first thing I take them through by asking them these questions, because people go out and they buy every trick, and then what do? Those tricks, they perform it once, they learn it. I don't really like it that much. Sits in a drawer.
Right.
So, but if you already know who you are, then you already know what you're going for. You already know what tools to start acquiring.
And also, we have access now to video through social media, through YouTube. So you can actually do the research yourself. You can actually go online and watch different performances and see what moves you.
Which is a bit of a double-edged sword, because even though we have access to just about everything, there's also a lot of misinformation, and sometimes too much information too fast can be very confusing. So I would say be very specific about what you're looking for. Try not to lose your direction.
Right. That's very good advice. I did want to talk a little bit about how you juggle being a mom and being a mentor and being a magician.
And a dog breeder.
And a dog breeder. I mean, why not?
I breed Pomeranians as a hobby. But that aside, yes, it really is a balancing act. My parents raised me to be independent, not because they wanted me to be independent, but because they were too damn busy to be parents. Right. You know what I mean? They were too preoccupied with just trying to survive and have a career. Right? Because there were times when we were so broke we didn't even have money to get to the next city, and then we had to pawn our jewelry and to buy a ticket to get to the next town. I mean, reality. It was tough times. I understand that now that I'm a parent, how difficult it is. So I can tell you that it hasn't always been that stable for me either.
Right.
But what they need is love and support and validation and understanding. I respect them. I respect their thoughts. I respect their feelings. I guide them and teach them right from wrong by teaching them cause and effect. When you do this, this happens. I teach them accountability.
Oh, so important.
Yeah. I wanted to teach my children independence and self-reliance. Right? And cause and effect to me.
Wonderful.
Becoming a mother really changed me, because up until that point I was so fixated on just trying to make my mark and be relevant in the world and be relevant in my profession and compete and prove myself. And then the day I became a mother, that all that went away. All I cared about was this little human being.
Yeah. Change of focus completely.
Completely, yeah. But when I did come back to the stage, I came back as a mother. I came back as a goddess. Nice. I came back with a whole different level of power and energy and a self-confidence that only a woman that has gone through something like that could understand.
Remember to subscribe and comment below.